Good morning, Bitcoiners. This is Daniel, day 51 of Citadel Summer. I am with the Bitcoin Citadel, and this is the Citadel Summer Project. Me standing out here in front of this beautiful lake talking about Bitcoin. And the project is going, we're getting close, right? There's only a few more weeks left. I think the last video will be on Labor Day, right? So this is video number 51. Today we're going to talk, the title of this video is called The Full Flower. And what I mean by that is I think we're coming to the full flower of where we are now in the latest technological cycle that we've entered into. And there's a theory of waves of technology. It's called the Kondratieff cycle, right? Or Kondratieff waves, K waves. And they're 40 to 60 year cycles. And that goes from the innovation to a distribution phase where it starts to develop and people start to pick up on it. It becomes more and more developed until it reaches a full flowering, right? And then it declines. And that's a way to describe technological cycles. The last cycle that we were in was from about 1965 to about 2015. And that was the cycle where we got digital computers and the internet. And, you know, that really transformed the world. And I think the full flower of that was the iPhone, Amazon, Google, the new economy that developed around those technologies. In this wave that we're in now, this new K wave that kicked off around 2015, I think the technologies that we're going to look back on, you know, the last one was the build out of broadband, the personal computers, mobile phones that were basically personal computers in your pocket, right? The development of cellular networks and satellite networks for communication. It was all about communication and computing, right? In the current cycle, the two big technologies are Bitcoin and AI. Those are the two defining technologies of this Kondratieff cycle, this K wave. And right now I think we're approaching the full flower of this cycle. We're getting there. One of the things about both Bitcoin and AI, because we haven't hit the moment for the last cycle, I think it was all, you know, the full flower was the iPhone, you know, and Android phones. Those beautiful pocket devices that we all have now, right? That allow you to have access to everything, all the information in the world is in those phones. And that's a technology that was the full flower of that cycle, that wave. And we got both sides of it, right? We got the ability for anyone in the world to have access to all of the information in the world in your pocket. But we also got the digital panopticon, the surveillance state, right? So technologies are neutral, my friends. It's the uses that are good or bad, you know, and again, good and bad for most people, for many, are relative terms. Maybe I'll talk about that on a Citadel summer morning, but not today. So here we are, Bitcoin and AI. We're ready for the full flower of this K-wave. What do Bitcoin and AI both require? Well, at this stage, we're kind of in the mainframe stage of AI, right? It used to be for computers. We got down to the computer, you know, in our hand on the iPhone with a beautiful screen, right? Everything that we needed right there for entertainment, for communication, information. But back in the old days, we had to go to movie theaters, right, to watch things on the screen. Then we had a television, we had a radio. The computers were big old mainframes. When I went to school back in the late 70s, early 80s, the computers were in a building. There was a building that housed the computer, and the way you got access to it was, if you were lucky, is you had a teletype terminal in your room, right, and you could type into it on a piece of flat fold paper, right, a stack of paper that was all connected together, and you could type in to log into the computer, type on the paper, the computer would type back to you the responses. So you didn't even have a screen. Didn't even have a screen back in those days. Those DMV style green screens were an innovation. That wasn't that long ago. That was in the late 70s, early 80s, right? How far we have come. So think about Bitcoin and AI, because those are the two defining technologies of our time, right? Bitcoin and AI. Where are we with them? Well, AI is not artificial general intelligence at all. The large language models, people are getting all worked up about them. You know, all they are is a different way. It's taking information and converting it into numbers. And people have been thinking about this for hundreds of years, right? Into knowledge vectors is really what you want to say, what you want to think about it. And they're trained enough. The data set is deep enough that what they do is they come up with, they really respond to you one word at a time. And the innovation is you can type in English language or whatever language you want. English is really the language of the internet. So I think most people, at least where I am, they type in natural language. Let's call it that, right? Not programming. You prompt the large language model with natural language, and it will return its answer to you in natural language as well. But it returns one word at a time, you know? Each word drives the next word. So your prompt will generate a response that is returned to you one word at a time. It's like, you know, picking a word out of a hat, one word at a time. It's more complicated than that, but that's really what it is. It's not an intelligent entity on the other end. It's just a very, very well, you know, it's been trained enough with it's read everything in the world or had everything in the world input into it, in theory, right? And it has a technology that you can speak to it. You can prompt it in natural language. That's really the innovation. And then it can give you a response that is pretty well, that does pretty well, right? Because it's been trained enough on what responses would be. What's the best next word to give Dan back here now? What's the best next word? Again and again and again. And they've gotten better and better. Because we're starting to approach, for large language models, the full flowering of that technology. Artificial general intelligence is nowhere near ready for release now. As a matter of fact, I don't think we'll ever have an artificial general intelligence, but we can talk about that on a Simulation Sunday. That's not a topic for today. And Bitcoin has reached its full flower. The foundation of Bitcoin has. Layer 2s are starting to come together now that are really going to make Bitcoin adoption explode. We're right at the hockey stick for Bitcoin, right? I think AI, large language models, are lagging a little bit behind, but we're right there, ready to explode for Bitcoin. And there's technologies that are coming out that are going to be awesome for Bitcoin. I think everyone probably who's listening to me has either heard of Lightning or knows something about it. It's one of what we call layer 2s for Bitcoin. Layer 1 would be the Bitcoin blockchain, the Bitcoin core, right? Where all the on-chain transactions occur. Layer 2 would be a way to scale that, so I can buy a cup of coffee with Bitcoin, for example. Or any other kind of medium of exchange activities can be done on layer 2. And to date, Lightning has been the most successful layer 2 that we've had in Bitcoin. But just the other day, I heard about Arc, which is a new layer 2 technology that solves some of the problems of Lightning. And I don't want to geek out here because a lot of you guys probably don't care about it, but there's issues with Lightning. I'm a pretty technical person. I've been looking into Lightning and working with Lightning a little bit, I kind of took a step back from it because it's just not ready yet. I'm not one of those early adopters. I'm no Hal Finney. I don't, it takes me too long to get in there and dig into everything. I can, that was my job, but the technologies that I got that familiar with were not Bitcoin, right? And Lightning, since I have a day job, I don't have time to geek out on it as much as it really needs. It's not a the full flowering of layer 2 medium of exchange Bitcoin technology is not Lightning, right? But maybe it is ARK, because a lot of the problems of Lightning, from what I've read about ARK and Riga, the recent Bitcoin conference, apparently it was out in the wild and people were using it, right? Which is awesome. That's one of the things I love about Bitcoin conferences. There's always new stuff that's available there. People, it gets a boost, right? So store of value, Bitcoin is already there. Medium of exchange, I think Gresham's law has to play out before Bitcoin really becomes a medium of exchange. But having good technologies like maybe ARK, right? Lightning's an okay technology. That'll help too. Both Bitcoin and AI are really starting to come into their own, or at least large language model AI. It's really an intelligence amplifier when you use it correctly. It's very, very fascinating. So, Bitcoin technology, real scientific engineered money is coming into its own. Large language model AI, intelligence amplifier, productivity amplifier coming into its own, right? What do they both require? They both require energy, right? Bitcoin requires energy for proof of work to secure the network, right? AI requires energy to crunch the numbers for training, especially. There's huge data centers for AI, and there's huge data centers for Bitcoin, right? Because both technologies require that kind of energy. And I think what's holding both of them back right now, in order to reach that Steve Jobs moment, the Macintosh moment, the iPhone moment, the personal computer moment, which was really the accelerator for the last K-wave from 65 to 2015, is that energy piece. And I'm pretty excited about small modular nuclear reactors and how they are going to be in the hands of Bitcoiners. Bitcoin Citadels will have small modular nuclear reactors at their heart. And that is going to drive the Bitcoin network and AI to the next level. That's really the I think that's the constraint right now in some ways, is the energy piece. So when these small modular nuclear reactors are commercialized and when Bitcoiners can get their hands on them, and I think that that's within the next few years, Bitcoiners are going to be wealthy enough that they want to have these. And in order for the security and the economic activity of Bitcoin citadels to move forward, they're going to want to have access to that kind of energy, both for powering the Bitcoin network and AI, and for security and the economy of these areas, right? So it's inevitable. It's inevitable. Bitcoin citadels will be powered by small modular nuclear reactors. They'll also be powered, I think, by another technology, OTEC, Ocean Thermal Energy Converter, I think it's called, which is industrial solar power is what it is. You have these OTECs in the middle of the ocean down by the equator, and the way that they generate energy is by the difference in temperature of the surface of the ocean and the very cold water deep within the ocean. And they pump the water up to the surface, and they use that delta between the temperature of the surface water and the water deep in the ocean to produce energy. And this is an old technology. It doesn't require any rare earth, rare earth minerals. It doesn't require any of that. It just requires sun, ocean and old industrial technology. And it's being developed now. And there's a Bitcoiner in Hawaii who's trying to get it off the ground, where they use Bitcoin mining to drive OTEC. So I think that's going to be another thing, is someone's going to come up with a Bitcoin Citadel that's a floating island citadel, right? That and I think I have a book that I want to talk about in another episode of the of Citadel Summer about specifically that. It's not a science fiction book. It's kind of a speculative book about space migration, but the first step of that is this OTEC, and I think it's really fascinating. And I think the rest of the book is, I don't know. I mean, I haven't talked about it on this show, but I think the whole outer space thing is bullshit. Sorry, kid show. I'm a simulationist, and that's just part of the grift is this whole outer space thing, right? But I think OTEC is a real technology, and it's a truly green technology, not like the solar that has to have these high-tech rare earth panels that really, I don't know if the return on investment ever even made on those things, right? So AI and Bitcoin for this K-wave, driven by small modular nuclear power. That is the formula for your Bitcoin Citadel. Eventually, I love Nolan Bowerly's conception of an eyeball, and that would be an AI that you get to train. Because that's the thing about AIs now. You don't get to train your own AI. You get to use the models, and you're using models that are hosted by big companies for the most part, right? And the whole digital panopticon negative side of these technologies is really, you type in anything and they can, right? The computer surveillance state can track what you're typing in. And if you type in enough things that are on the red flag list, right? Whatever that list is, the panopticon can take a special interest in you. So obviously what we want to do is we want to be able to have our own AI that we can train, just like we have our own Bitcoin core node and our own mempool, right? So we can have more private transactions on the Bitcoin network. We want to eventually have our own AI that we get to train, and that we don't have to send off our prompts into the ether and have a big corporate, big company surveilling everything we do, right? So that's going to be the next step. That's down the road, but I think it's in line of sight, right? We get our own small modular nuclear reactors. We have our own data centers for our Bitcoin mining, and our own AI farms, so we can train them, and we can have our own. We don't necessarily even have to come up with our own models, right? But we can train our models, right? We can train them, and we can query them privately. So that's the way I think it's going. Let me know what you think. Give me a like, subscribe, and a comment if you want. And I will talk to you tomorrow. Peace.